Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, and the host of this show. And every week I feel so privileged to be able to talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies. Check out our archives of some great episodes looking back at EO, YPO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, and many more. Netflix and Kinko's as well. Go check out those archives. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And this is part of our series highlighting some of the great graduates of the EO Accelerator program, which I was a member of, who've joined the EO Entrepreneurs Organization and talking about their journey. So I'm really excited to dive into this story here today. Our guest is Giovannoli. He's the founder and CEO of Nine Sale, which is a search marketing lead generation firm specialized in working with law firms, accounting firms, and AEC firms. That's architects, engineers, construction firms, I believe, if I got it right. Yep. He's also an active member of EO New York and a member of the Dean's Board of, I'm going to say this wrong, Fairleigh Dickinson, or is it Farley Dickinson?
Fairleigh Dickinson.
I got it right. University Silverman College of Business. Is that how you say it? Business?
Yeah.
His alma mater. And Joe is also a wine and bourbon enthusiast and enjoys golf and travel. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done for you podcasts and content marketing. Go check out our website, rise25media.com, or email us at support@rise25media.com to learn more. All right, Joe, happy to have you here today. And I also want to give a quick shout out to our friend and client, Elise Holtzman, who I know is a friend of yours and recently joined the Chapter Accelerator program as well. The Lawyer's Edge podcast. It's great. Go check that out as well. But I want to bring you back, first of all, to your beginning journey in entrepreneurship. Because, I was an English major in college, and that certainly didn't really prepare me for being an entrepreneur. But you had the wisdom to join your entrepreneur club, which I thought was telling. So was that something that came to you in college? Were you the kind of kid who was out like doing lemonade stands on your parents' lawn? And I know we'll get into, you actually had an uncle who was involved in entrepreneurs organization years ago. So maybe it runs in the family.
Yeah. So thanks for having me first and foremost. And so I was the kid that had lemonade stands and as growing up as a kid. And but I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to be a business owner. I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant, frankly, up until about high school when I took an entrepreneurship class. But I never really thought I would be a business owner. I thought actually I would be more of a business development and salesperson. My junior year, I said to my parents that, I want to go to culinary school. That was genuinely what I wanted to do. And I love cooking. It's my grandmother got me into, cooking when I was very young. And it was a passion of mine. And, my dad sat me down and said, listen, you're going to work like a dog. You're not going to make a lot of money. And unless you own a restaurant, I don't know that that's the life that you're going to want, because you're going to want to have kids and whatnot. And so I took that to heart and I said, okay, I'm going to go to business school. So
did you ever work in a restaurant, or did you ever cook in a restaurant?
I worked in food service for the New York Jets. Okay. But that was about the extent of it. And I had done some, helping out with, our local church organization and in the food service kind of space. But I worked in a hardware store from my freshman year of high school through part of college. So, and I had the knack for sales and marketing. So I said, I'm going to go for marketing and see how this goes.
I definitely food service. I waited on tables. I did food delivery, in the car. And then I was a cashier in a restaurant in college. Great experience, but definitely hard work. Your dad was right about that for sure.
Yeah. He was, he did seem to have his finger on the pulse with that one.
Yeah. So you decided to study marketing in college. And at what point did you get involved in the Entrepreneurs Club and figure out that was something you were interested in?
Yeah. So I actually co-founded the Entrepreneurs Club on campus. It was called Launchpad. A friend of mine and then a friend of his decided that we were going to start this thing, and, nice small group, but we were focused on trying to help students on campus that were looking to start a business, to help them brainstorm, their business plan, potentially help to set them up with investors. We were very fortunate. very early on in, I think, his author career, Mike McAllowitz, we actually got in touch with him and had him speak at the campus, which the campus actually sponsored and made a larger event than we would have been able to on our own. So, I thought it was cool because I really, really enjoyed the idea of creating something new. And I've always been a bit of a process oriented person. So I also like the planning aspect of it. But we kind of just as friends went into it and said, yeah, this will be fun. It'll be something to do and it'll look good on our resume. So we kind of just jumped right into that.
Yeah. Mike is a great past guest on this show. I've interviewed him twice, and I just bought his new children's book for my kids. Actually, he came out with a children's book, which is really cool. So definitely go check that out. So, and then you graduated from college and you'd done, it looks like you'd had a social media marketing company in college, and eventually you found Nine Sale, and with Nine Sale, you kind of at first were everything to everyone. You realized that just doing marketing services for every type of business out there wasn't exactly the right thing to do, even though actually you grew early on.
Yeah, I had a unique experience. Obviously, as you mentioned, I started a company while I was in college, which was a whole story in and of itself. But
well, let's pause on that. What was the highs and lows of that experience?
So I was given a project my junior year, junior year, it had to be junior year, to write a business plan. And I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know how to do this. And they said, yeah, so you're going to write a business plan for a business you're never going to start. We're going to give you a topic that you're going to write it on, and you're going to go off and do it. And I went to the professor after that class and I said, there's no way I'm going to write a business plan about something I'm not passionate about. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So a little bit of back and forth, I got approval to write a business plan for a business that I planned to start. And if I could start it and demonstrate that I was able to execute on part of the business plan by the end of the semester, I could have an A. So
cool.
I went off and, myself and a buddy that was in the class that was my business partner at the time. We not only started the business, but we landed 3 clients, and we were fully operational in 2.5 months with profitability. Like, we were profitable.
Nice.
So,
nice.
So really a cool experience. I also learned a lot about, vetting out the right partner and making sure you have the right partner and stuff like that. But, it was a very eye-opening experience. And again, didn't really want to be a business owner. I wanted the A in that class, which was what led me to it. But I did get a taste for agency world, which was kind of what took me into my next 2 jobs, which were working in agencies. I learned a lot about what I would do differently if I had run the show.
Yeah.
And I was presented with an opportunity to start my own company. And I took full advantage of it, and I jumped right in.
And what did that mean? What do you mean you were presented with an opportunity to start your own company?
So the company last agency that I had been working for, unfortunately, was going through some hardship. We did really well on the sales side of things, but we struggled on the production side. So I kind of saw that writing on the wall, and I started to look for other, ways that I could potentially, go look for another job, or do I start this business? And I said, you know what? My dad had been diagnosed with ALS in 2013, and he had given me advice at that point of, don't not do something you're going to regret later. So, AKA take a chance. Yeah. And I said, I think this is my chance. I think that if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. Life's going to get ahead of me, and that's going to be it. So I quit my job and I started a company and had no revenue coming in, had nothing to my name. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. It is what it is. So we'll see what happens, and gave myself a year, of runway. And in a month I had a $50,000 a year client. So nice. I was off and running.
I often say to people that that's the best way to start a company, is to go work for another company doing something similar, learning everything that you can about how to run that business, and then go off and do basically the same thing. Because, then you don't have to learn everything new. Like, the worst is to be like working in a yoga studio and then go start a flower shop, because then it's like completely different,
Yeah. Well, and I was super grateful for the opportunities both of the agencies had given me, because I learned a lot, as you just said. And, the good and the bad, right? I got an idea of what the right things were to do. I also got an idea of like, I probably would have done that differently, or would have handled that differently. but like those learnings are completely invaluable. Like you could start a company on it, literally.
So with the last agency you worked for, you said that their problem was they did okay on the sales side, but then they stumbled on the production side. And for you, with your new company, you grew quickly out of the gate, but then you found that the problem was that one, you weren't going after one core type of client, and also you had trouble kind of keeping up with all the growth. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I mean, we went from, kind of year one being like very, very minimal revenue because it was like at the end of the year to, my first full year in business, we did almost $250,000 in revenue. And it was because the newness factor of me being in business for myself, people knowing me and saying, oh, do my website, do this, do that.
Yeah.
It was very quick. And I actually had to hire a bunch of people who all had the skill set. So I had a developer, I had a designer, I had a writer, a social media person. So I grew the team very quickly. And once that, kind of newness wore off, I was left with a really big payroll, not a ton of revenue coming in because virtually none of our revenue was monthly recurring. Mm-hmm. So I was in a place where I was holding the bag, and, new business owner, don't want to disappoint any of your employees, don't want to cause any issues. I just put myself into debt to, kind of float the salaries. And I was like, oh, we'll get a new project, but it won't be a big deal. And, a couple of months of no more projects coming in, I had to make a decision. And so that was probably my lowest point in the business at that point.
So was it one of those, you had to go into the office and lay off a bunch of people type of scenarios?
I did. So we had a moment where, I don't know if you're familiar with the book by John Warrillow, Built to Sell.
He's a client of ours. Yeah.
So
great book.
My favorite book, I've read that book mid 20s times now, 25, 26 times.
Yeah.
Every time I read it, I get a little something different out of it. But I had that moment where it was like, we had a couple of clients in the SEO space that were always telling us, hey, I landed this great case. I landed this great deal, from a website lead. We're so happy, blah, blah, blah. And then I have all of the fires of, website clients are never happy with anything because, design changes, somebody and their family mentions something, so they have to make a change to it. And so I had a moment where I was just like, we just need to focus on SEO. We need to focus on one thing because it's one skill set I'm hiring for. And, I can go out and I can be really great at SEO. So we actually parted ways with about 80% of our clients. And we also let go a bunch of our staff, which again, just because of where I was in the business, I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. So, gave people probably more severance for a year's worth of work than I needed to do, or 2 years worth of work than I needed to. But I wanted everybody to feel like they could go out and find a job and not suffer. And I kind of took that hit and kind of added to our debt count. But we made the decision, and it was myself and one other person, and we just went off into the SEO space and with, I think at the time, 2 or 3 clients, and, started to build out our process. So it was a big point for us.
Yeah. And I'll just second Built to Sell. Amazing book, amazing podcast as well. Definitely check it out. My business partner, Jeremy, just moderated every month he moderates John's monthly live webinar that becomes a podcast recording afterwards. So go check that out. That's invaluable. Definitely. About the SEO piece, I'm curious, how did you learn about it? How did you teach yourself? Did you have mentors that you turn to? It's a big thing to say in your business, we're going to drop 80% of what we're doing, 80% of the clients, and just go after this one thing. Did you have a lot of expertise at the time, or did you figure you'd develop it as you went along?
So I had enough of an understanding of it from working in the agency world to kind of to build strategies and to do the basic stuff. The person that I kept on my staff had the rest of the experience, had development experience, could handle what he needed to handle. So made the decision because I knew that from a strategic side, which was really where my brain is very strategy focused. So I was able to come up with great strategies that were creating and generating results because at that point I was still very knee deep in client work and I was still involved in that. So, a mixture of having the right person there as well as me doing that was key. But I was also very fortunate. My uncle's business partner introduced me to somebody who is still a mentor to me today and is fantastic, Ben Kirschner. He owned a fantastic SEO agency. Actually, they go far beyond SEO, but he got his start very similar to how I did. So I was able to turn to him with questions, business questions, SEO questions, technology questions, and the amount of time that he gave me and the knowledge that he shared with me was paramount in us actually, being able to do what we've done so far.
Yeah. So critical, so valuable. And you've had a couple of clients, one in the law firm space, who's also an EOer, so a law firm, and then also a roofing client that had been with you for a few years now. Talk about where they were before and kind of some of the pieces that you put in place. What are the building blocks for those who don't understand SEO, which is 99%, I think, of the world, and kind of the results that you've gotten out of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've, out of all the clients, we have a lot of, we've, as we've grown, we picked up a lot of clients, and everyone that we have seen some really good successes. But, the two that you mentioned specifically, one is somebody that I got to know well in college. He started his company right around the same time that I did. And, our paths crossed, in a couple of different ways. And, so they've been working with us for almost 5 years now. And, they started out as about a $750,000 business when, they started with us, and to date, they're, over 6 million in revenues, annual revenues. And, SEO is a big part of their lead source. We also do their paid search too. And we've been involved in not just at the SEO and PPC side, but we are looked at as a true partner of their business. We help to onboard their marketing manager. We help to, kind of get that person up to speed, constantly, talking about ideas with them, even that go outside of just SEO, because we intimately understand their business. So, a really good example of a key client for us and a great buyer persona for us, if you will, would be them, right? Like they are the perfect picture of a great client. And the other side of that is the law firm that you mentioned, who's an EO member.
Before we get to that, I want to ask about, so, let's say you're in an unsexy industry like roofing. What are the things that you do? Because when I think of SEO, I think of like, okay, you write a bunch of blog posts, maybe post on other websites and stuff. But for an unsexy topic like roofing, what do you do?
So there's so much, and honestly, roofing and siding and windows go hand in hand. So these guys are great at roofing and siding. And I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've ever seen a house that has brand new roofing and siding on it, but it's pretty awesome. Years ago, I would have said the same thing, but these guys are the premier cream of the crop roofing and siding company. So, but answering questions that everybody has, right? Like, my roof is leaking. How do I determine where my roof leak is? Well, that's not an easy question to answer. So, help them to generate content around how do you guide somebody to figure out where their roof is leaking, or, do they actually need somebody to come out and replace their roof, or is it going to be a patch job? Ultimately, the whole purpose of SEO is to get eyeballs on the site, so that way the site can actually help you to convert. So in their case, it's a lot of answering homeowner questions, so that way they don't have to pick up the phone and call somebody and ask a million questions to the receptionist. It's making sure that they have strong before and afters, right? So nothing is cooler than seeing a house that looks really run down, and literally by replacing the roof and the siding of it, the house looks like you just built it fresh. Yeah. So really cool stuff. And I mean, it is actually one of my favorite industries to work in, because the changes are just so drastic, and there's the content out there is just endless that they can be found for.
And talk also about the legal client as well, because that's my background. I practiced law for many years, recovering lawyer now. And I also know that lawyers are not the easiest clients to work with, because they can be a little particular. So talk about that one.
Yeah. So this client is an EO member, and they, he kind of just jumped in head first, and he said, "We're going to do what you tell us to do. So tell us what we need to do to make a lot of money from our website, right? And make it a really big part of our business." And so we started out on a pretty modest retainer with them, but we gave them the roadmap to success. We told them how many pieces of content a month and a quarter that they needed to be creating. We were out there constantly going out and getting backlinks for them and helping them to make sure that the content what they were creating was playing into the overall strategy with, the keyword strategy. The last couple of years, they've generated over $1 million a year annually just from their website alone. And majority of those leads come from organic search. So not being typed in, their name, not being typed, their URL wasn't being typed in, all because, they have a great SEO presence. And at the height, as soon as COVID hit, they made a decision to double down where most companies didn't know what to do. So they were trying to shed expenses because they didn't know how long the pandemic was going to put them, behind the eight ball. They doubled down. They actually opened a new practice area during that time. And within 6 months, we had it actually generating real revenue for them, which was a fantastic decision on the managing partner's part. He's somebody I always envy and I see as somebody that I look up to and respect because he just had his finger on that pulse the whole time of like, we're not going to stop. This is an investment and this is our opportunity to shine. They have since opened up offices in a couple of other states and, just continuously pouring money and time into their website because they know that there's a formula there. It's for every dollar they put in, they're getting X amount back.
Yeah.
And, it's been an incredible journey with them. They've been with us for 3 or 4 years now. And, again, absolutely love working with them.
Now with these clients, I imagine there's a lot of education that goes into it because you've got to set expectations that it's going to take a little while to get results and you got to be patient with it. How do you manage those expectations?
We're pretty upfront in the sales process, right out of the gate is just, hey, listen, this may not be a fit for you and that's totally cool. Like we don't, we're not a fit for everybody, but you're going to invest money in this and you're probably not, if you see anything before the 6-month mark, it is pure gravy, right? And you should be really happy, but you're probably not going to see anything until the 6-month mark at least, right? And that also something that we've done in our business, which has been a kind of a major change and a good change for us is, we don't want to work with just the brand new startup law firm. Doesn't matter how much money they have. The reality is a brand new startup law firm with a brand new website that has no authority on Google is going to take us forever to build authority on. So we look to work with firms that are, 5 to 15 attorneys. They've been around for a few years. They've had their website for that long. They are creating some content. Our buyer persona is pretty specific because we know what it's going to take to get people to be successful. And while we can help some of those smaller new startup firms, their time and money is better spent in going out and networking, maybe going out and getting a couple of press pieces through the law journal or whatever. Right. And those are the consultative conversations I'll have with them, but they're not our core customer typically.
And what about companies or law firms that are already creating content? What are some ways in which you advise them on, things that they could do if they're already creating content, but maybe they're not optimizing it in the way that they should?
Yeah, I would tell you that most law firms that just create their own content in-house aren't doing it to be SEO friendly. And whether it's a conscious decision or not, that's the truth. A lot of in-house marketers are, you'll have 2 marketers serving 60 attorneys, right? And that formula just doesn't work. So what they're doing is they're doing their best to just get this content pumped out. So if an attorney volunteers to write a piece of content, they write it. And, the marketing person reviews it to make sure that there's, it's laid out well, grammatically correct, and then they publish it. What we come in and we do, and we tell marketers and attorneys to do all the time is take the time to understand what it is you're trying to write for and understand whether or not you're trying to rank for something or are you just trying to get some information out there, because there's a big difference between them. And so our company is when we work with a law firm, we actually write out the structure of what the article should look like. We call them skeletons. So we actually, essentially, if you think about writing a draft of all the headings for a paper in college, we essentially do that for them. And we give them a couple of pointers for each heading as to, hey, you should include this, or you should look here and kind of replicate what this person has written or something of that nature. But we help them to understand what it takes to actually rank for SEO, and what they typically will produce on their own is very different than what we try to get them to do.
Right. I want to dive into your involvement with EO and the EO Accelerator program. So first of all, you had an uncle who joined what was YEO before it changed its name to EO many years ago, was in the tech space. So when you were growing up, was that something you were conscious of? You were aware of this organization and like, one day I'm going to be part of it? Or was this something that came around later?
No, honestly. So first answer, yes, I knew that it existed. I knew that he would go on forum retreats and stuff like that. I didn't really understand it. Honestly, I was pretty young when he was involved in it initially. And so I knew that it existed. As I mentioned before, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. And so I didn't think anything of it, but he actually kind of pushed me into the Accelerator program because he said, I think this will be really good for you. You qualify for it. I'd like you to do it. And so as soon as I got a taste of it, it became the cool kids club to me, right? So you get, in school, you wanted to be part of the winning team, or you wanted to, sports team, whatever. You just, at least for me, I always had that passion for like wanting to be part of that cool organization that, it's not like everybody can get in and whatever. And so for me, I set my sights on, okay, I got to make $1 million in revenue because I got to get into the EO proper, right? So it became my driver. When I started the company, I wanted to make a lot of money and whatever, and I didn't even care about that at any point. I started wanting my team to be awesome and wanting my team to be happy, and I wanted to get into EO. And the day that we officially graduated, which was back in August, I cried that day. I was so incredibly happy, and I was so like, I could not wait to tell my uncle. Like I was just, it was one of those pride moments for me that again, I can never forget. And the team who, they have no involvement in EO, but my team was over the moon about the news. Like they knew that this is what we had been working for, and that I was looking forward to getting into this. So it was just a really, really cool moment when it happened.
That's really cool. And then, it's funny for me, I want to call out Ryan Shorthill, who's one of the EO Accelerator trainers that I had for 2 years. And he said one thing that really pissed me off, but in a good way. He referred to us, the room of accelerators, as having baby businesses one day. And I was like, I don't have a baby business. I've been doing this at that point, like 6 or 7 years or something. But then I stepped back and I was like, you know what? He's kind of right. This is it's like a beginner business. And I was like, screw that. I'm going to prove him wrong. And I did eventually, right? It took a little while, but thank you, Ryan, for lighting that fire under me. And then any other pivot points along the way? I mean, we talked about a couple so far. We talked about the realization you had niche down. You had to pick a niche. You had to shed all these different services. Anything else that you would credit as helping you to graduate?
Yeah, there were two things. So the first one was when we made the decision to focus on law firms. That was a big heated debate internally. We had several employees at that point, and pretty much the line was drawn in the middle. I had a business partner at the time, who's no longer a business partner of mine, completely amicably, but not a business partner of mine at this point. He didn't want to do law firms and didn't want to work with lawyers. And, one of our employees kind of agreed with him, but he worked directly under him, and myself and the salesperson really wanted to go for it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to pull the one and only time that I ever pulled this card. I'm the majority owner of this business, where this is what we're doing, and I want to move forward with it, because I wasn't working on the assumption that we were going to see wild success in the first year, but I was working on the assumption that in 2, 3, 4 years, law firms were going to catch up and realize that SEO is important. And I wanted to be really primely positioned in the market for this to happen. So for me, that was a big, big change. And then the next big change, which came very shortly after, was my fanatical focus on culture. Our core values, we ironed our core values out in, I think it was like 2018. We really ironed out those core values, and just to give you a taste, our first core value is make dad proud. Like that for us, and as a team and the team at the time, it was something that we could all grab onto, right? Is it allowed us to realize and test, people we were interviewing and whatnot, where is their moral compass, right? What are they all working towards? And the one thing that our team shares is that, they want to make sure that they're always working above board, that we are doing everything white hat, which is a SEO term. And that, anything that we're going to do is not going to jeopardize the company's reputation, their reputation, and is something that their parents would be proud of, right? That we want to make sure that they are always doing whatever it's going to take to make dad proud, right? That's so great. Yeah, so I mean that was a huge thing for me, because we invested a lot of money and time in it. But we've had some really happy employees. Our team is always willing to go above and beyond to help one another and to help our clients. So that was a really, really big change for us that I think catapulted us to where we are today.
That's really cool. All right, I want to wrap up with my final question. So I'm a big fan of gratitude, especially expressing gratitude publicly to those who've helped you along the way, peers, contemporaries, mentors, that sort of thing. So if you look around at your peers and contemporaries, could be others in EO, could be the uncle that you mentioned. It could be, you mentioned Ben Kirschner, I think was his name. Who do you respect? Who do you admire? Who would you want to acknowledge publicly?
Yeah, I sat down one day and I thought about the five, right? The five people that I really have had a major influence on the business. And, of course I could say my parents and stuff like that, but, really the people that, they didn't have a requirement to help me or to want me to succeed or anything like that. But, my uncle Keith Giovannoli has been there literally from day one and has, let me bump around and make my mistakes, but he's always, helped me to kind of get back on track and has given me great guidance. I mentioned Ben Kirschner, who has always been there for me. Debbie Keterer, who is the current president of EO New York, helped me to get into my forum and has always been somebody that I've admired, and she's really stood in my corner every square inch of the way here. Somebody from my past, Chip Reichard, he owned a Sandler franchise and he was my Sandler trainer. And I used to say that meeting with him every week was like the New Year's resolution that I got to renew every week. It fired me up and it motivated me, beyond words. And my really good friend, Dominic Romano in EO New York, he every day it comes up with really inspiring stuff, and he's always been somebody to have my back no matter what. And, I wouldn't be able to operate without him. So
that would
be my five.
That's great. Joe, this has been wonderful. Where can people go to learn more about you and check you out?
Yeah. So our website, 9sale.com, and, go to our team page. My LinkedIn is attached to that. We're always putting out new content, and, so check us out there. I also am a pretty regular contributor on law.com. So, I welcome anybody reaching out.
Good place for you to be. All right, Joe, thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.